Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today.
Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis.
One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis series, he wanted me to talk about legendary actress Jean Harlow and her mother, Jean Poe Harlow Carpenter Bello. Now, Jean Harlow is considered to be one of the great icons of 20th century film and is considered to be one of the greatest sex symbols as related to the golden age of Hollywood. And she was one of the biggest stars of the 1930s. However, that road to stardom basically put Jean Harlow on the road to becoming a woman in crisis, because the road to stardom basically was started by her mother, who had really serious daddy issues. Now, Jean Harlow was originally born Harleen Harlow Carpenter and is the daughter of Jean Poe Carpenter Harlow, who was the daughter of a wealthy real estate broker, Skip Harlow, and his wife, Ella Harlow. And in 1908, Skip Harlow decided to maintain what he believed to be a tradition by arranging his daughter to be married to Montclair Carpenter. And as she was underage at the time, she didn't really want to be a part of this marriage and possibly wanted to choose her own partner, and this caused friction between Jean Poe Carpenter Harlow and her father, and those daddy issues basically led to her having a very resentful and unhappy marriage to Montclair Carpenter. And that marriage basically was one where the mother was angry and the man who was the father of Jean Harlow, or Harleen Harlow Carpenter, was extremely emotionally distant because he wasn't really emotionally connected to her, and she wasn't emotionally connected to him. And while they looked to build wealth economically with as a family, what they really didn't connect with each other, because that was shown by Jean Poe Carpenter basically looking to keep her daughter in a state of arrested development, calling her baby. And it wasn't until Jean Harlow was 5 years old that she found out her real name was Harleen, when she was enrolled at a finishing school for girls. And that's basically where she basically was on this road to becoming a woman in crisis, because her mother constantly protected her, and protected her, I believe, because of the daddy issues she had from her father, ironically participating in the same behavior that basically led to her dysfunction, transposing, I believe, that whole dysfunctional paradigm as related to not looking to make the daughter happy. And I don't think she saw that as related to things. She couldn't see how she was subconsciously participating in the same behavior as her father, and these issues basically put her in a place where she didn't see her daughter as a person, but saw her as an attachment to her, and saw her as an attachment where they had this codependent relationship. And as they had this codependent relationship, she looked to be the one who had the power to make her daughter into this star, not really allowing her to develop in a very healthy way. No, that's what was happening here with Jean Poe Carpenter Harlow, that put her on the road to making her daughter a woman in crisis like herself. And eventually, after Jean Harlow basically, or Harleen Carpenter basically wound up finishing school, this is where her mother filed for divorce. And as she filed for this divorce in 1922, this is where Harleen Carpenter wound up further down the road to becoming a woman in crisis because instead of having an emotionally unavailable father, she had no father at all. And while Harleen loved her father, she wound up being taken away from her father, and having a daughter have her father taken away again further leads her down the road to having daddy issues, and those daddy issues basically make it where she cannot get her emotional needs met by a man. And instead of looking to get her emotional needs met by a man, what she does is start looking for attention from other places, and that's what basically put Jean Carpenter on the road to stardom, because her mother again was out here looking to take her daughter down the road to stardom, and again looking to take her daughter on the road to stardom. But people in Hollywood told her that she was looking to become an actress herself. Her mother was looking to be an actress, but she was too old. But then her mother basically looking to achieve her dream, similar to the way Joe Jackson wanted to achieve his dreams of being a musician, went out here and projected this onto his son. This is where Jean Poe Carpenter then enrolled her daughter Harleen into the Hollywood school to become an actress herself, and this is where she was on the road to learning about acting and met people like Douglas Fairbanks and Joel McCrea and Irene Selznick, and dropped out of school. And after she dropped out of school, this is where the single mother, now Jean and Harleen, moved to Kansas City. And this is where Skip basically, again, looked to disinherit his daughter because she was on this Hollywood kick, because back then wives were supposed to be submissive, and she was looking to participate in the pre-feminist paradigm of being an independent woman. And this is where the father, again, wanted to make sure that his family looked optically right. But this is where Jean Poe, again, looked to continue trying to go on this quest to keep her daughter's appearance up, and sent her daughter to a summer camp called Camp Jock-Kanaka in Michigan, and that's where she got scarlet fever, which would cause her problems later on. And after she went to Michigan and became a part of this camp, this is where she was sick, and again, this is where Jean Poe Carpenter was told she couldn't see her daughter. And then she went to a school in Illinois for a while, and this is where Jean Poe Carpenter then decided to get involved with another man, Marino Bello, who basically was a Pookie. And this Pookie, Marino Bello, was only involved with Jean Poe Carpenter, Harlow, because all he wanted to do was go out here and get this money from this wealthy woman. So he was basically living off this woman. And as he was living off this woman, she basically was out here and living off her money. And again, this is what she wanted to do because of her daddy issues. And she picked this guy, Marino Bello, because she wanted to have power over a man, because she was upset about her father taking away her agency as related to choosing who she would marry. So she got involved with this Marino Bello because she wanted to get involved with this guy because she wanted to have power. Now, as this was going on, Harleen, or who would eventually become Jean Harlow, at 19 years old, then got involved with another wealthy man named Charles Chuck Fremont McGrew III, who was an heir to a large fortune, and they dated and eventually got married, and got married in 1928, whereas her mother got married to Marino Bello, which is a great contrast because whereas Harleen was basically marrying into wealth, basically Jean Poe Carpenter Harlow was marrying this Pookie because she wanted to gain power over this man. And Harleen didn't attend her mother's wedding, which was really interesting, but her mother attended hers. And in 1928, eventually Chuck McGrew got his inheritance, and they moved to Los Angeles in Beverly Hills, where Harleen became a socialite. And as she became a socialite, this is where McGrew basically looked to distance himself from her mother and establish his own household. And as he was looking to establish his own household, what happened was that Harleen basically was participating in the same pattern that her mother did, because they both became heavy drinkers. And I believe that happened because they became emotionally distant from each other, because they never really had an emotional bond with each other and never really bonded, because the model that Harleen had seen is that basically her relationships were all about economics, because when it comes to wealthy white people, everything is about economics, and they really don't marry for love. They marry basically for the economic reasons, to maintain wealth in the family. And as they wind up marrying that way, what they do is eventually wind up marrying, and they don't wind up becoming emotionally or spiritually satisfied, even though they come together. And basically what happens is that they wind up in a place where they don't wind up happy, because they don't really love each other. They're just with each other for, again, obligations and convenience. Now, I talk about that in depth in a video where I talk about people having relationships for obligation or having relationships for love. And it looks like Harleen really didn't have a relationship with this first husband for love. They just basically had a relationship out of convenience to, again, maintain wealth and social status. And as Harleen was out living in Los Angeles with her wealthy husband, she befriended an aspiring actress named Rosalie Roy. And Rosalie didn't have a car and basically was looking for her to drive her to an appointment. And as she was driving her friend to this appointment, what happened was that she was approached by Fox executives who said that they weren't interested, but then she was given letters of introduction to Central Casting and eventually started to go on this road to becoming the actress that her mother wanted. And when her mother found out about it, what she wanted to do is push her daughter into becoming this actress. And as she looked to push her daughter into becoming this actress, and she basically got a lot of job offers, which she kept rejecting. Eventually, after pressure from her mother, she started taking work at the studio, and took work at the studio even though she had wealth. She took the work at the studio, working towards acting, and eventually took work in a film Honor Bound as an extra, and then eventually started to get small parts in different films, and even a lost one called Chasing Husbands from Charlie Chase, and again eventually wound up signing a contract with Hal Roach Studios, and then started getting roles in Laurel and Hardy films, Double Whoopee and Bacon Grabbers. And eventually, after leaving Hal Roach, this is where she wound up starting to further expand her films roles as an extra. And then eventually, in 1929, she eventually got signed by Howard Hughes. And as she got signed by Howard Hughes, she eventually became the platinum blonde icon. And as she became this platinum blonde icon, she was again signed by Howard Hughes. And as Howard Hughes looked to make her into a star, it kind of reminds me a lot of what happened with Anna Nicole Smith and the rich billionaire simp who she was involved with. What happened with her is that he was looking to make her into a star, but things really weren't catching on. And as they looked to try to build her into a star and have her at the side of different stars like Charlie Chaplin and Clark Gable and James Cagney, now she really wasn't really that much of a star. People liked her look, but her performances weren't that great. And at that time, this is where she started to follow her mother's pattern in starting to deal with Pookie types, because that's what was modeled for her as related to the Bellow fella. And this is where she got involved with gangster Abner Zwillman, and who bought her a jewel bracelet and a Cadillac, basically like a simp looking to, again, have her as an attachment, similar to the way her father basically saw her as an attachment. Her father basically was having her mother as an attachment, and the way her mother saw her as an attachment, not seeing her as a person. And eventually what happened was Howard Hughes was tired of losing money on Jean Harlow and tried to help her, but nothing worked, so he eventually let her go. And this eventually led to her getting a 2-picture deal with Columbia Pictures. And then this mobster got upset because as she went and became her own road to being an actress at Columbia, he realized he couldn't have power over her. But there was no way he was going to have power over her, because Harleen, or Jean Harlow, basically wasn't trained to submit to a man. And now that she was basically out here as related to these relationships, she was caught up in hypergamy, looking to monkey branch from man to man, because even though she was married, eventually she wound up again getting involved with this mobster, which tells me that she followed her mother's pattern of possibly divorcing or having affairs. And basically, as Columbia Pictures got her into their studio, they had a movie with Frank Capra that they called Platinum Blonde to capitalize on her blonde hair color. And as they looked to capitalize on it, they basically looked to, again, change her color, again, because it was a hair color that was made from ammonia, Clorox bleach, and Lux soap flakes that basically damaged Jean Harlow's ash blonde hair. And she didn't really let the secret come out about the formula, and it basically stayed with her. But the platinum blonde was cast in different movies, and as she was cast in different movies over at Columbia, she basically started to rise as a star. And as she started to rise as a star, she started to then sign with MGM for Beast of the City, and then started to do a promotional tour. And as she did the promotional tour, she basically was appearing at different places, and this basically led to her building up her career. Now, she was almost about to be the woman in King Kong, but Fay Wray got that role. But she still continued to get involved with toxic males, and that is all due to the pattern that she saw as related to her mother, a pattern that she saw of her mother as related to her relationship paradigm. This whole relationship paradigm that she followed continued to see her getting involved with different guys. And again, this is how she got involved with Bugsy Siegel and became the informal godmother of his daughter when they were living in Beverly Hills. And as she continued to rise as a star, she became a big star at MGM. And as she became a big star at MGM, this is where she got involved with her second husband, which basically shows me the pattern of, again, dysfunctional women getting involved with beta male men. And what eventually happened was, as she got involved with her second husband and looking to Monkey Branch, eventually this man was a man in crisis, and a man in crisis because he wound up taking his life. And as he took his life, I believe that people thought it was that her husband had killed himself. But her husband basically did kill himself. I mean, Paul Byrne had killed himself because as an actor and a screenwriter, I basically believe that he basically felt emasculated by this whole situation of seeing his wife basically being this big star. And when some men see a woman being more successful than themselves, even though this guy had won an Oscar, he basically, seeing this woman have more power, basically possibly frustrated him along with his failed relationships. And this basically put this guy on a road to feeling like he couldn't have that success. And this basically, it was messed up because, again, he had low self-esteem because as he was with Jean Harlow, one of the most beautiful women in the world, when he was with the most beautiful woman in the world, he possibly was feeling worthless about himself. And while he had helped his woman become this big star, he basically felt like things weren't working and eventually wound up taking his own life. And that's what happened here with her second husband, Paul Byrne. And again, she continued on having relationships and continued having relationships over the course of her short life. I mean, she continued to have relationships over the course of her short life and continued to have great success. And after the suicide of her husband, she then got involved with another man in her life. She got involved with this third man, William Powell. And as she got involved with William Powell, eventually what happened with Jean Harlow as she was on the set of what would be her final movie, as she was on the set of what would be considered to be her final movie, what happened was she started to get sick. And as she started to get sick, people didn't understand what was happening to her. And what people thought she had was a flu because she had basically gotten over it as related to things. Now, this final film, Saratoga, is where her health started to deteriorate after she got a wisdom tooth extracted and had to be hospitalized. And after 2 months, she began shooting the film again and appeared on the Life magazine cover. But as she continued to try to film Saratoga, she started to continue to have really serious issues as related to her health, and eventually her health began to deteriorate to the point where, sadly, Jean Harlow wound up passing away at 26 years old, and wound up passing away due to a cerebral edema as a compilation of a kidney failure, all because she was not really taking care of her health, because she had this issue as related to the scarlet fever when she was a teen, but then eventually it turned into the situation as related to kidney failure when she got older. But Jean Harlow, again one of the greatest actresses of the 20th century, was on the road to becoming a woman in crisis because of her mother's daddy issues, and those daddy issues led to her having daddy issues as related to her father, and those daddy issues led to her having issues as related to her relationships with men, showing a clear pattern of what happens when a woman has a bad relationship with her father. It makes it where she doesn't trust men and looks to go out on her own. And as she looks to go out on her own, she puts her daughters on a bad road. And as she puts her daughters on this bad road to trying to live to be independent by themselves, sadly, what happens is it puts them in a state where they don't grow up to become healthy women, but what happens is that they wind up becoming women in crisis, and it passes it on from generation to generation, because as Jean Poe Carpenter Harlow passed her values on to her daughter as her first teacher, she didn't teach her daughter how to become a healthy woman. No, she taught her daughter how to become a woman in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to women winding up on the road to becoming women in crisis, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and you can also find The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about historical men and women in crisis in Hollywood, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App for a minimum of $15, and if I know something about that person or I can do research on that person, I will make that video for you. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today.
Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.